You have 60 minutes to finish this test. You have a week to submit this essay. You have a year to complete these courses. All of these are societal expectations and timelines that we must follow. And sure, it makes sense. If there were never any deadlines, we would never get anything done. But with all of our hectic and busy lives, full of to-do lists and responsibilities, it begs the question, do we actually have enough time to grow? Do we have enough time to sit down and pause and actually think about our personal growth before jumping on to the next Zoom meeting or making an addition to our to-do list? The world never stops, and unfortunately, we are caught up in that cycle. Although this frenetic pace gets our work done, it makes me wonder, do we actually have enough time to focus on our personal growth? Walking into school after an online COVID year, I felt absolutely unprepared. If you asked me to tell you anything I had learned in the previous year, I would have laughed in your face. But it wasn't super funny when I was struggling with material I should have already known. And because of this, I was struggling with new material that built on new concepts. School is where you learn. But like me and many other students, school is also about hitting deadlines. You must finish high school after these 4 years. You must take this test by this date. And although these deadlines make sense, why are we penalized for not being able to follow them? The problem is that we are constantly put under this pressure to adhere to these deadlines. However, that is not good for us because we don't have the time to grow on our own accord. Because of societal expectations, we often try to cram as much as we can into our schedule as possible. For example, we often ask ourselves the question, can I do this? Instead of the question, should I do this? People learn things at different times. This is no secret. And instead of evading this fact, it's crucial that we accommodate and accept it. We are all on a continuous time crunch, one that we never really know the end of until it actually comes. But is that truly an excuse for the mental stress we put ourselves under just to prioritize advancing? You will never grow without leaving your comfort zone, but that does not mean you should ignore your boundaries in order to do so. Boundaries are meant to be stretched, not broken, and the growing pains we do experience do not have to be painful in order for us to learn from them. I am a singer, and I have always enjoyed giving award-winning performances in my shower. Many people tried to get me on a stage, and some even attempted to put me on the spot at family dinner parties or weddings. But I was always very guarded about my voice, and I never really felt ready to sing live. However, I started to notice that I was behind the other kids, and while kids my age and even younger than me were out performing on stages, I was simply too afraid to. My mom tried everything to get me on a stage. Tough love, pep talks, awards, nothing ever worked. But because I was worried about being behind, and in my head, being behind was the worst thing imaginable, when my mom asked if she could sign me up for singing lessons that included live performances, I said yes, despite the fact that I knew I wasn't ready. But hey, I just had to get out of my comfort zone, right? And that obviously meant singing live in front of a ton of strangers. Well, honestly, doing those performances was probably the scariest and maybe the most humiliating experience of my life. I felt awful before, after, and during the performances, and nothing felt worse than to disappoint in myself as well as from the disappointment from those around me for not meeting the performance standards. I felt like it didn't matter where I wasn't where I needed to be, and therefore it was pointless. And so, when we ended those performances, I was elated. Because I had started treating singing as a job rather than something I actually like to do, I started to lose my passion for singing. But after I quit, that passion sprung back, and I didn't feel as boxed in by expectations for my voice. I realized that I wanted to get better at singing, and not because some random parent asked me to sing at their kid's wedding, but simply because I wanted to. It was something that I wanted to do, and I realized that in order to do so, I had to focus on my singing ability rather than making it all about performance. So instead of practicing simply for the sake of getting on a stage, I started practicing my singing abilities and getting more comfortable with my voice. But within this journey, there were 3 main concepts I had to learn and overcome. The first thing I had to do was I had to tackle the disappointment in myself for not meeting performance standards the performance standards created by those around me, as well as the disappointment I felt in my voice because of this. I'd always told myself I was a bad singer, simply because I was a bad performer. And no matter what anyone told me, this idea stuck in my head. But because I wanted to be free from this fixed mindset, I had to consistently assure myself that I wasn't a title or a standard, and that my progress was much more important than my status. More often than not, we simply reduce ourselves to a label. If you get a bad grade, you are now a bad student. If you fail at something important, you are now a failure. But by using this negative language on ourselves, all we do is reinforce the box we've created for ourselves, and this prevents us from growing past these mistakes. It's important to realize that your progress is much more important than where you are, and it's very important not to fixate on how you are doing now, but rather think about the future possibilities and work towards them. After I started thinking of my voice in a more positive way, I realized that I got more confident and comfortable with my voice. The second thing I had to do, and probably the most scariest of all, was tell my mom I didn't want to do singing lessons again. I know, scary. In my mom's head, the logic was simple. You like to sing, therefore you should sing. It makes sense in theory, but I knew I did not want performing to even be part of the equation at this point. The goal was to get comfortable with my voice, and if I made it all about performing again, I was worried I would simply slip back into the same mindset I had before. Explaining this to my mom was not easy, and at first she didn't understand and tried to convince me otherwise. But slowly, as she saw how stubborn I was in my ways, she left me alone and rather supported me. It can be scary to ask for time, but it's even scarier to go into something unprepared, and it's also more detrimental to your personal growth. Communication is a very important skill, especially if you want to challenge what other people want from you. But even after all of this, one thing lingered in my mind. Am I making the right choice? I knew I needed time, but rather I was worried about the response. Although I tried hard not to fall into this trap, I kept comparing myself to other kids who were on stage. And this was the same mindset that got me in this place, that got me here in the first place. But, and this took me a long time to learn, growth is not comparable. You are simply not able to compare your growth to someone else's growth, because the different paths and journeys that you guys have taken have led you to different destinations, and those destinations are not comparable. Once I realized that it was okay to stem away from what I thought I should be doing or where I thought I should be, I realized that I was finally able to assess what I actually needed. And I also learned the skill of defending my usage with my time. After all of this, I got more confident and comfortable in my voice, and I decided that I wanted to start singing lessons again. But this time not for performance, but solely for my technique. With the singing lessons, I started to realize that maybe I wanted to try performance again, and this time not for anyone else, but simply for myself. And so, free of any expectations or ideas that I would disappoint someone or do bad, I got on stage, and well, I sang. I was nervous, really, really nervous, but in the end, I felt amazing. I felt a relationship with my voice and the audience that I hadn't before, and singing didn't become this daunting thing in which people admired an insecurity of mine, but rather it felt like something that I was in control of. That experience taught me so much, and I gained more confidence in both my personal life as well as my singing life. If we didn't look down on those who chose a path that was different from the one presented to them, they would be allowed to grow without any ideas of disappointment or expectation, and in the end, they would be overall better and happier. The truth is, we need to normalize taking the time to grow, because once we do so, individuals will truly be allowed to maximize their growth potential. And as much as I would love to say, take a gap year, live out your life, do that thing you wanted to do for a long time, I know that that is very unrealistic. And this is coming from me, a high schooler who probably has 10 things I need to memorize by next week. The world will not change in a day, and we still live in a society with expectations and deadlines. Because the truth is, we don't have enough time to learn. We don't have enough time to adapt. We don't have enough time to grow. But what we can do is make the time. Manage and manipulate our schedules in a way that will allow us to maximize our growth potential while also meeting the deadlines around us. Because the truth is, we will never be free from those expectations around us, but we can learn how to manipulate them in a way that will benefit us as well as benefit where we need to be in society. Of course, advocating for yourself with your growth and communicating with others, understanding yourself, and also defending your actions is very important in the growth process. But like a plant needs water to grow, we need time to learn what growth means for us. And we also need time to grow. And honestly, there's nothing wrong with taking a minute to just figure it all out. Thank you. Don't you wanna be the life of the party? Don't you wanna be the cream of the crop? Don't you wanna feel those shivering fits till someone calls it poets or someone calls a cup? Don't you wanna land the role of a lifetime? Well, you better get down on one knee, 'cause you could play the life of the party if you can pray with me. Who needs lovers? Not I. Who needs heaven above? Don't have time for things unsaid, for baking bread, for love. All I need is room to fight, hand in fisted glove. The sky. It's my turn to fly. Don't you wanna be the life of the party? Don't you wanna be the top of the heap? This is where the jamboree never ends. Why not be counting friends instead of counting sheep? If you wanna join the heavenly choir, hurry up and get yourself in line. But don't you pass the life of the party until you pass the wine. Let the drinks pour,